When I first went to college, freshmen were required to live in triple rooms in the dormitories. So, because of this, I had two dorm mates. On one side of the room were bunk beds, with a single bed on the other side. This becomes important to know. I met both of my dorm mates the day I moved in. There was Trent, a philosophy major who was a little bit weird but relatively normal. He was very studious, but also an athlete. For the most part, he would just lay on his bed, the top bunk, and do work. The other dorm mate, the one who took the singular bed, was named Miles. He was a completely different story. Whereas Trent was friendly, Miles was weird. He would rarely speak to either of us at all. Hell, he wouldn't even tell me what his major was when I asked him. He just ignored my questions. And this was actually normal for the time that we lived together. I learned very quickly that he didn't want to be friends, so I tried to give him his space as much as possible. He stared, though, all the time. When I came back into the room after class, if he was there, which he nearly always was, he would just stare at me. Sometimes he wouldn't break this stare for quite a long time, but when he finally stopped, he tended to not pay much attention to me or Trent again at all. It was just so damn creepy. Still, whilst it was creepy and it was annoying in the beginning, I kinda just learned to put up with it. There was one night when I got back to the room that neither Trent nor Miles were there. I had known that Trent was at a party, but I had no idea what Miles must have been up to. It was pretty late, so I just rejoiced in the fact that I had the room to myself and that I could probably get a great night's rest for once. I fell asleep quickly, and I slept hard and deep. I did wake up at one point in the night, because I thought I could hear something. My immediate instinct was to look over at my digital clock. However, I couldn't find it. I kept staring at where I knew it had been, and wondered if we might have had a power outage or something. It took a few moments more for my eyes to completely adjust to the light, and I yelped in surprise as I saw a figure standing in front of my desk. It was Miles, standing in the room, staring at me. I don't know how long Miles had been there, or how long he had been staring, but already knowing how odd he was, I thought it was best to not really ask him anything. I simply told him I was sorry for yelling because he had startled me. He didn't respond, so I turned my back to him and did my best to fall back asleep. It took a while, however, because even with my back to him, I could tell he hadn't moved away at all. I felt him there, looking at me pointlessly through the dark. Eventually, I heard him move to his own bed and crawl in. Still, I wasn't able to fall back to sleep until I finally heard him snoring. Miles was really becoming a problem, and I didn't like when he was around. Things got worse one day when Trent announced he had gotten a room in a jock dorm or something. I was going to be left all alone with Miles, that weird guy, and I can tell you that it was very frightening. It was the day before Trent was moving that my fear began to grow. I tried my best to convince myself I was overreacting. Miles must just be a weird goth kid or something. Maybe I was being prejudiced. I was sitting alone doing my homework when I suddenly heard a noise behind me. I jumped and was shocked to see Miles was in the room already. He must have come in and somehow was very quiet. I waved him hello and went back to my work. Here's the worst part. I could see his reflection in the window in front of me. He just stared at me and was not going to look away. After about 2 hours of this crap, I saw him get up. He walked slowly through the small room and was suddenly right behind me. I was frozen, not really sure what I wanted or could do. I couldn't turn around and look at him. I was so afraid. Miles put his hands on my shoulders, and I jumped again, but that didn't compare to what he did next. Miles slowly lowered his head until his mouth was right on my ear. I was shivering, scared, and not sure what he was going to do. I mean, I thought he would kiss me because he was massaging my shoulders with his hands. I'm not gay, but I didn't really mind a guy touching my shoulders. This was weird, though. Miles whispered into my ear, and I'll never forget the words that boy said to me. "When Trent is gone, I'm going to cut your face off. I'm going to put it on and wear it like a mask and go to your house for Thanksgiving dinner." Miles held his mouth there for a moment when I felt the shock of what he'd just said. I mean, my body felt like a bolt of lightning. However, once it was over, and I was still scared, I jumped up, grabbed my wallet, and quickly sprinted out of the room. I ran right to the campus police and told them what had happened. When they talked to Miles, he of course denied everything. There really wasn't anything they could do except to move Miles to a different room. They did that, and for a short time, I had a triple dorm room all to myself. I would see Miles many times for a semester or two, but after that I never saw him again, and I never want to either. I had an encounter with someone when I was a teenager that scared the holy living crap out of me. I mean, this was absolutely terrifying. I'll try to convey the sheer terror I felt when this actually happened. Well, incident, I guess that's not really the best thing to call it. It was really me being stupid. Why is it that even nice people can turn into the biggest jackasses when they get behind the wheel of a car? This was weird. Route 90 in Illinois goes up into Wisconsin and Madison. When you get far north, around Rockford, the road goes down to 2 lanes. For some reason, around this area, there's a lot of really stupid driving. People like to block other people from passing the semi-trucks, which generally have to stay in the right lane. It really is one of my least favorite places to drive. I'm not trying to absolve myself of acting like a jerk when I drive. I have to make that statement right away. I can definitely do some dumbass things while out on the road. This time, I was coming back down from Madison to Illinois. It was a really cold day, but it was also fairly sunny. I always hated those kinds of days, because it seemed so weird to me to be so cold and yet so bright out. I was still on the Wisconsin side of the road when I came upon a green sports car with darkly tinted windows. It was at first driving behind a semi-truck in the right lane, and I was also driving in the right lane. There hadn't been any cars for a while, and while I was coming up on the green car following the semi, I moved into the left lane to pass them up. Before I could, however, the green car moved into the left lane as well. At first, it seemed like the car was trying to pass the semi too. However, when it got to the front of the semi-truck, the driver tapped their brakes. I had to hit mine, and before I knew it, I was right behind the semi again, with the green car right at the back of it, blocking my way once more. At first, I thought it might possibly be some sort of valid reason for hitting the brakes, but that idea sort of faded when the car picked back up, and then right when it got to the front of the semi, hit the brakes yet again. For anyone who's ever been caught in this situation before, you know how annoying it is. The trucks had a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, which is why we always passed them up, and to keep from being able to travel any faster was a real pain. The green sports car carried this on for about an hour, and the entire time I just kept getting angrier and angrier at what was going on. When it had gotten to the point that I felt like just ramming the car from behind, it hit the brakes hard, nearly causing an accident. Suddenly, the car quickly took the exit on the right. I was so angry at this point that I did something that I now know and knew then was stupid. I followed the green car. It got off the freeway, stopped at the lights at the end of the off-ramp, turned, and drove to a department store parking lot that wasn't very far off the exit. I pulled up right behind it, ready to confront the jerk for what I had been put through for the past hour. Before I could do anything, though, a young lady got out of the driver's side car and walked very swiftly back to my car. The very moment I noticed her holding the tire iron, it was too late for me to do anything about it. She smashed my driver's side window, sending glass flying everywhere, and then she smashed my back driver's side window as well. While it was scary that she had done this without provocation, and so swiftly as well, that wasn't the scariest part of what happened. The woman came back to my door. She didn't say a word. She didn't look angry either. She didn't look like anything. Despite her actions, she seemed very, very calm, and looking into her eyes, I saw, nothing there. There was such a vast emptiness of emotion, or even acknowledgement there. I don't think I'd ever been more frightened of a person in my life, because if there's such a thing as a soul, I was convinced by looking into her eyes that this lady did not have one. I got my car going and took off. With 2 broken windows and the cold air killing me as I drove, I took off. I got back to the freeway and drove. I drove to my destination without stopping, constantly looking behind me to see if that green sports car was still following me, but I didn't see it again. The whole incident made little sense to me. I mean, people play stupid games while driving to annoy other drivers. We all know that, and I shouldn't have followed her off the freeway for sure. But her reaction to me doing this, and that look on her face, well, let's just say I saw that in my dreams for a very long time after that. I went to school with this kid named Billy, who was my best friend as I was growing up. We did a whole lot of things together, most of them harmless really. But there were the occasional really out there things that he would do, trying to burn ants with a magnifying glass, albeit to little success, or ripping the wings off a butterfly and then watching it suffer. But as weird and distasteful as these things might seem to us, they didn't appear too bad back in those days. I'll let you know right away that this is not going to be one of those typical stories about a boy torturing insects that moves on to animals, and then finally people. It wasn't really like that. I mention the insects simply because a lot of young boys do that, and they don't end up being crazy. If Billy had ever killed anything more than insects, he did it in a way that I never found out what was going on. No. What happened with Billy was unexpected to me when it happened. Billy and I, like I mentioned, grew up together. We hung out and did nearly everything from our preschool days up to a majority of our high school days. We had frequent sleepovers, some that were planned and some that were not. We took walks, played tag, went to the movies, you name it. So, when did things go bad for the two of us? Well, it was when we were both 16 years old. We were in Billy's room playing video games late into one night. As usual, when we did this, he would start dozing at one point and then fall asleep. After that, I just played by myself, because there was just no waking Billy up after he was asleep. I sometimes thought that he could even sleep through a war if one happened to be going on out there. While I was playing, I was leaning back up against Billy's bed. He had been sleeping for about an hour. I was 16, feeling a bit riled up, and thought I'd check under Billy's mattress to see if there were any magazines I might want to look at. This was a bit before the internet was a common thing. I didn't fear Billy waking up, because I could have stripped him naked and put him out in the snow, and he still would have never woken up. When I looked, there were no magazines, but there was a spiral notebook under his mattress. I decided to see what was up with it. Grabbing and flipping through it, it seemed like some sort of badly organized journal. It seemed like Billy was writing his thoughts down in no particular order, and for no particular reason either. Right away, I could tell I should have put the journal back, but I didn't. Hey, I was 16 and very curious, so I decided to read it and see what was going on in my best friend's mind. Most of the early stuff was quite boring, but as I flipped through, I noticed him writing in circular patterns and things like that. It began to get odd. Billy wrote a lot about his feelings, or more correctly, he wrote about his absence of feelings. He talked about how he stopped feeling emotions towards his family and friends, and just settled into general apathy toward them. He had mentioned sometimes getting into fights with other kids, just to see if he could feel angry at them. But no, nothing worked. As I read on, I began to feel for my friend. He never wrote about hurting other people, other than the fights. This story is not going to end with 4 pages worth of him describing how he was going to kill me, so don't worry about that either. But it did paint me a picture of a kid who seemingly had lost his emotions and his ability to empathize and feel with others. Billy was just a guy going through life, wondering why it was so hard for him to feel anything. I ended up putting the journal away. I tried to put it out of my mind for the most part, and when Billy and I would hang out together afterward, I did notice myself paying particular attention to his expressions of emotion. I did, after a while, notice him begin wearing bandages occasionally, and when I would ask him why, he would generally brush it off. I began to think that maybe he was cutting himself, maybe as a way to get himself to feel. When we were 17, we were once again in his bedroom playing video games. However, contrary to the last time, I was the one who ended up falling asleep first. I wasn't sure what woke me up first, as I suppose most people feel when they wake up, but it only took me a second to see the scariest sight of my life. Billy was in front of me, taking a razor blade and just completely shredding his arm with it, cut after cut. His arm was already shredded up pretty bad, and I had no idea how long he had been doing it. There was blood all over him, all over the blade, spewing all over the floor. It was the sickest thing I had ever seen in my life. After a moment of sheer shock, I felt I had to get over to him and grab the blade from him. When I grabbed his arm, he immediately slashed me with the razor blade, and I fell back in surprise. I expected Billy to start shredding me up like he had done to himself, but he didn't. He simply asked me if I could feel it. I told him yes, and the look on his face that came was just terrifying and empty. He closed his eyes, and I ran out the door to wake his parents up. Billy lost a lot of blood, but fortunately for him, his mom was able to compress the wound decently until the ambulance got there. I went along because I'd gotten cut pretty bad as well. The whole experience was sort of haunting in a way. Billy was in the hospital for a while, and then he was placed in a psychiatric ward, and he was in there for even longer. Visiting him when he was in the psych ward seemed nearly impossible. His parents, and often his doctor, didn't think it was the best idea. A ton of time passed, and at one point, without even telling me, his parents packed up the house and moved. Every now and then I try to find out what happened to Billy, try to see if he's still alive, if he's in the hospital, or if he's in jail for killing someone, who knows what. But I haven't ever been able to locate a single thing about him. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you guys liked the video, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. That sort of stuff really helps me out with the audience engagement and really helps my videos get out to a lot more people. So hopefully we can get to that 1 million one day. Help me out, guys. That'd be great. Once again, starting this week on the second channel, we're going to be doing some true crime stuff, probably twice a week if I feel in the mood for it, and feel like doing all the research required. Those will be on Wednesdays/Thursdays and Saturdays/Sundays probably. So look forward to that if you're interested. There's a link to my second channel in the description. The name is Mr. Blue Sky, so keep an eye out for that. If you guys feel like contacting me for any reason, links to all of my social media will be in the description below, including my Facebook, Twitter, and Gmail accounts. Send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get back to you as quickly as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please make sure that it has proper grammar, and try to include as much detail as possible so it's long enough for me to include in a video. Also, please be sure to include in the tagline what the name of the story is, if it has one, what type of story it is, if it has a theme, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. If you guys are curious about the art used in this video, links to my artist, Alan, will be in the description below. He does a lot of horror art stuff, and he's really good at it. He also does commissions, so if you guys have any projects you want to work on or something, please be sure to check him out. He can probably get you something really good. As usual, links to the music used in the video will be in the description below in the order which it appears. I think that's pretty much all for now, guys, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.